Welcome back. An all-woman jury has been chosen in the second-degree murder trial of George Zimmerman, who says he shot an unarmed Trayvon Martin in self-defense. Prosecutors and defense attorneys selected that panel. It ended today, the jury selection process. Prosecutors have said Zimmerman, a neighborhood watch volunteer for his community, profiled the black teenager as Martin was walking back from a convenience store to the home of his father's fiancée. Zimmerman identifies himself as Hispanic. At least 5 of the women are white. The other woman's race or ethnicity was not immediately available. And Mark, I want to start with you as the criminal defense attorney here. Why does that jury composition make sense, and which side do you think it's a greater advantage to?
Well, on its face, it's certainly beneficial to the prosecution. But as we were speaking off air, you never know what goes on in a jury room. And I think just judging a jury on the basis of its race or its gender is risky business, notoriously risky business. It only takes one juror to hang it up. The evidence is scant to disprove that Zimmerman acted in self-defense. That perhaps is counterbalanced by the composition of the jury, perhaps not. I like to have a little bit more faith in the jury system, and I think they decide cases fundamentally on the basis of the evidence, not based on their race or ethnicity. I think jurors are beyond that. And I've served on a criminal jury here in Manhattan, and my experience bears that out.
So Zimmerman's going to have to try to prove that he was acting in self-defense?
No, the prosecution has the burden of disproving under the stand your ground law that he acted in self-defense. It's a formidable burden that they have. They have a very tough case, and I'm not just saying that as a defense lawyer. It's a tough case by dint of the law. And there's very, very little direct evidence. Some of it will turn on whether they let this expert testimony about the 911 tape in. But there's, who else is going to recount what happened there that night other than George Zimmerman, assuming he takes the stand, as I think he functionally has to.
What do you think the outcome of this case is? Because if Zimmerman is convicted, there's going to be some angry people. Dominic, I know you've said if Zimmerman walks, you think there could be widespread reaction to it and not necessarily good reaction.
I don't want to predict any bad things, but I can tell you, I mean, it's already simmering. And if Mr. Zimmerman walks in communities of color, it will be seen as a system of no justice for people of color. Now, what I'm curious about, you're saying that the 911 tape may not be admissible?
No, the tape will come in. The question is whether the experts can opine on whose voice it was.
But the question that I just can't seem to get around, once they play that tape in its entirety, in which you hear Mr. Zimmerman saying, "I'm following him. I am following him. Trayvon Martin is not following me. I'm following him." And then you have the 911 operator saying, "Sir, no, don't do that." How do you get around that?
Well, the theory is that he went back to the car. Eventually he ceased his pursuit, went back to the car, and that's when, in his telling, Martin went after him, and that's when the self-defense claim arose. Whether that will fly or not, I can't say.
And then the thing that I think is so fascinating is, if I'm understanding the attorney right, is that the prosecutor's burden is to disprove that he was acting in self-defense, and that's going to be difficult for the prosecutor to do.
Because you have to prove a negative, which is inherently
very difficult. So the outcome of this case is likely, and I agree with Dominic, to incite all kinds, because people don't understand what's going to go on in the court. I don't understand. People just watching it, like when they're at work, don't understand what's going on in the courtroom. You get a verdict like that if it comes out that way, and the reaction on the street can be a reaction based on issues of race and gender and economic well-being and age that have nothing to do with what's going on in the courtroom, and that is incredibly dangerous.
It's about this generation of folks in our country who are in constant fear of being victims to violent crime.
Absolutely.
And this growing feeling that vigilantism is accepted in certain sectors of our country.
If there's an acquittal,
that's a bigger problem.
Yeah.
If there's an acquittal, or no problem, if there's an acquittal or a mistrial, I think a lot of the community reaction will be shaped by the lawyers representing the Martin family and the civil rights leaders that came out in support of him very early. I mean, they've pleaded thus far, and I'm referring now to the Martin family lawyers, for calm. They've expressed a lot of faith in the jury system, and one would hope that that faith would abide no matter which way the trial goes. So I think a lot of it will depend. Who knows how it's going to turn out, as Dom said, but how they react to the verdict will dictate the tone.
Andrew, again, and I know we're about to move on, but let's just look at, and none of us were there, but the premise of what we've been told. This kid, Skittles and a plastic bottle of iced tea. And minutes later, he's dead. I mean, how do you get around that?
I think it's a very, both sides, the stories on both sides are very difficult, not just to reconcile, but to find plausible on either side. There's the gnawing feeling that there's something that's not being said here, and the truth probably will never come out. That's my feeling about it.
And on that note, we're going to take a quick break. Up next, should food stamp recipients be drug tested? Is that unfair or just tough love? We'll get into that debate next.